The 2022 NFL Draft is over. What grade do we give the Cowboys in their 9 selections that they made? And who was the biggest surprise of the class? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I am Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at McCool, at McCoolBCB, at Marcus_Mosher. He is Landon McCool. Check him out at McCoolBCB. Landon, you can tell, man, I'm tired. This draft is worn on me, but how are you doing today, sir?
Good. I listen, Marcus, I don't have any problem being your secretary and passing along any messages.
What do you think people would think if they found out that you're the one that actually tweets all my tweets out?
I think they would be shocked. Yeah, I think that would be one of the best third act twists of Cowboys Twitter, I think, of all time, for sure.
I'm tired. I just got done doing an article for the game day where I broke down literally every single pick and gave grades for every selection. This draft is exhausting later, but I'm excited to talk about it for the Cowboys because I think we learned a lot. I think there were some big takeaways. I do want to mention off the top, we're going to talk about every player briefly today, but over the next week, 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a deep dive in every single selection, how they fit in with the Cowboys, why the Cowboys made that pick, what's the ceiling, what's the most likely scenario here. So if you're looking for us to break down every pick today in depth, that's not going to happen. So make sure you guys are tuning in all week. That's how we.
There's too many picks, guys. There's too many picks for us to do in the 30 minutes.
We'd be having a 4-hour podcast today. So I think this
exactly.
is better. Right? We're going to make sure that all these guys get their time on the show. But let's start with this, Landon. What was your big takeaway from the Cowboys draft class this year?
I mean, I think the big thing that we've learned this year is that a lot of these tried and true Cowboys axioms are falling by the wayside. The idea of them only kind of preferring Power 5 conference folks and drafting them as really kind of this was obliterated by this draft. I mean, Tyler Smith, Jalen Tolbert, Matt Waletzko, all those guys coming from smaller schools that we would have. I mean, honestly, like we'll talk about Tolbert. But one of the reasons that we didn't even discuss him before is, I mean, we watched him, but we didn't really discuss him on this pod is because the Cowboys don't normally go for guys like that. So it was surprising when we got into the draft and people were starting to like whisper that the Cowboys really, really liked Tolbert. First of all, kudos to the Cowboys for keeping that close to their chest because honestly, I think I heard every wide receiver except for Tolbert linked to the Cowboys. And I just think it's showing you that the Cowboys are maybe evolving here in some of their evaluations of what they're willing to take.
I also think it's interesting that we heard a bunch of noise about them trying to trade up in the first round, which I still think is the case. But we have a long history now of the Cowboys really not trading up at all, right? They've got one trade in the fourth round for Tyler Biadasz in 2020. Before that, can you even think of the last guy the Cowboys traded up for? Was it DeMarcus Lawrence in 2014? I mean, that's probably it, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly within the top 90, top 100 picks. That's the only one I could think of.
I mean, you could tell unless the Cowboys absolutely fall in love with somebody, they're just not all that interested in trading up. They didn't make a single trade during this draft, correct?
No, they didn't. And I think, they clearly had, and this is another thing we could talk about overall, but the class, they clearly, just based on what they said in their post-draft press conferences, they clearly had pods of players that they liked, and they were willing to, I think really that fourth round pick was when we thought that they would potentially make a trade with one of those fifths to move up. They were perfectly satisfied to let those guys fall to them so as to not have to give up one of those fifth round picks and make those selections because I think they really liked the value in the fourth and fifth round. Yes. So, I think they were satisfied with the way that they had set up their sequencing, and I think that they, were able to kind of regain a lot of the value that some folks may have felt like they missed in the early rounds with all the great picks they had, especially in the 5th round, where they got guys who, that were really high on their board that had fallen because of just the sheer volume of players in this draft.
I've got some other takeaways that I want to talk about here that I noticed during the draft. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including league reviews and news this season, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering needs, including live betting, the playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Landon, one of my big takeaways is I think this draft class, more than any draft in recent memory, feels like a future draft, right? They're not drafting guys necessarily to fill needs this year, although they did, but it felt more about, for example, they draft Tyler Smith with the idea of him playing guard, but to eventually play left tackle, right? They draft Sam Williams with the idea that he's probably eventually going to be their starting right defensive end, probably just not this year, right? They draft Jalen Tolbert, who maybe eventually is going to replace Michael Gallup after Gallup's 2-year contract is up. I mean, because that's really what Gallup's contract is. I think there's an outside chance, Landon, that, maybe Connor McGovern looks really good in training camp or something like that, but you might only get one day one starter out of this whole draft for the Cowboys. We're just not really used to that.
Yeah, I think it's likely that Tyler Smith is your starter at left guard.
I think it is too, but outside of that, I don't see anybody else starting right away.
Yeah, well, again, I think the issue here is that, the last 2 years you're picking a lot higher, and you're picking in drafts that had a lot more talent up top, I think. The Cowboys, at the positions that they drafted in, they needed talent, but they didn't necessarily need their starters. I think Tolbert comes in as your hopeful wide receiver 3. And I think you need 3 wide receivers, so you could, maybe consider that a starter, or however you want to phrase that. I think he's going to play a lot. Sam Williams is a guy who will come in and be part of a rotation. So I you're right that I don't think he's going to be a starter, but I do think he's going to be heavily involved. Tyler Smith is likely gonna start at left guard. Ferguson, I think, will be your tight end too, and or at least working up to that. I think he's going to get some play. So yeah, you're right in the sense that they didn't draft immediate walk-in starters, but I also think that, again, this is a pretty talented team, and so it's you can draft guys like this at positions that you need, and not necessarily expect them to come in and play full time at the spot that they are going to start out at.
Yeah.
So I think Sam Williams being kind of your third rotational defensive end, that'll last maybe half the season, and if he picks it up, he's going to see an increase in his snaps. Tolbert, similar situation. If he plays well, obviously they'll feature him more. A lot of these guys, I think, can earn more playing time while serving important roles early in the season, even if they aren't starting roles.
The other thing that I really liked about this class, and my biggest problem is some of the players that they picked, but I love that they are drafting money 5 positions, right? They're spending resources at the most important positions. We're going to call Tyler Smith a guard probably for year 1, maybe year 2, but they clearly drafted him with the idea that he's going to be a left tackle. And that's pretty clear. You drafted an edge rusher in round 2. You drafted a wide receiver in round 3, a tight end in round 4, a left tackle project in round 5, a cornerback in round 5. They're not going to waste picks early on guys that just aren't going to return a lot of value, and that's nice to see.
I honestly, and also I think another thing that we should comment on is that I think their draft makes a lot of sense. There's a clear plan here. I think it's one of my favorite things about the Waletzko pick is that it's Tyler Smith insurance. Like what happens if Waletzko develops in a couple years, looks really good, and you like Tyler Smith at guard? Maybe you keep them there. and there's that kind of fallback plan. I think the fact that what you talked about, they drafted positions that are very expensive money positions, as we call them, at clear key spots up top. And then what did they do in the 4th and 5th rounds? Into the 6th, they took athletes. They took either athletes or guys that like Ridgeway who that are going to play a very specific role. And things like that. I mean, again, we talk about axioms that could be falling. Ridgeway being drafted in the 5th round, that's new. We haven't really seen that. It doesn't seem like a very heavy investment, but frankly, any nose tackle drafted by the Cowboys,
it's
top
back-to-back years, right?
Yeah,
back-to-back years they spent at least a draft pick on a 320-plus pound defensive tackle.
And the comment in the post-draft interview was that they felt like they needed 2 of those guys. It's not just necessarily competition. I mean, there is competition, but they felt like they needed 2 of those big bodies. So I think that this draft makes a lot of sense. Like it really does kind of hit the needs they had. It makes sense for the way their future planning, their future proofing everything. And like you said, they hit positions that are expensive on the free agents market so that they can get the most savings by having them on rookie contracts.
Just don't tell Quentin Bohanna there's a competition at nose tackle, because I did this weekend and he got very mad at me.
Oh.
Yeah,
wow.
But check out his Twitter.
He's a big guy. You don't want mad at you, Marcus.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's whatever. Here's the final takeaway. I completely agree with the Cowboys' philosophy on positions. I love that they took athletes. I think by the relative athletic score, they had the 8th best draft class in terms of average RAS. And actually, if you remove the John Ridgeway pick, they're number 1, which is kind of funny. But they took athletes, and even their UDFAs, which we'll get to later this week, early next week. I mean, they're all athletes from the UDFA class. But my biggest takeaway is this draft just didn't fall great for them. And there's years where everything is perfectly laying up. Like CeeDee Lamb falls to you at 17. You've got Trevon Diggs falls to you, and those are guys at positions you need. This year, it felt like it was tough, right? Because
luck regression.
Yeah, I mean, I think they would have loved Trevor Penning at 24 if he would have fallen to them. He didn't. He went 19. All the offensive tackles went early. I think the Cowboys would have been interested if one of the receivers fell to them. I think we had 5 or 6 receivers inside the top 18 picks. I mean, those guys just flew off the board. Even the receivers in the 2nd round, right? You had a bunch of receivers go early 2nd round that weren't options for the Cowboys, including Christian Watson, Sky Moore, George Pickens. So sometimes the draft just falls your way. This one didn't.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. And it was happening from day one. And look, I mean, part of it is, we need to admit it can be tough to draft at the back end of the rounds if you have needs that need to fill, right? So I think that the Cowboys had several different players taken right out underneath their nose. I think that they were trying to trade up to go get Olave, it sounds like. And they weren't able to execute that trade. New Orleans just was able to get it done. Which,
by the way, we both like Olave. I wouldn't have done the trade. That
was a lot, man.
I mean, you had to go up to 11. That would be your 2nd and 3rd round pick at least to do that.
And I guess, that's really where I was surprised, and maybe the Cowboys were surprised too, is there were a lot of folks willing to go up. And I think we had discussions that we thought that maybe there was value in trading up this year because there were teams desperate to get back and there weren't a lot of teams going up, but that didn't necessarily end up being the case. There were several teams that clearly were very interested in going up. So, I think the way the board fell, listen, we talked about it on Friday or whatever, when we talked last. The quarterbacks not going was just devastating to the Cowboys draft board.
Not only in the 1st round, but the rest of the draft, right?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that's why the Cowboys, I feel like, were kind of on the other side of these picks falling to where they wanted to them up until the 5th round, because those 5 or 6 guys that you were expecting to kind of go in the top, at least in the top 90 picks, they didn't go, and only 2 quarterbacks were taken, I think, in the top 100 picks, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think 3. You ended up having 3 with
okay.
Corral, Ritter, and
Oh yeah,
and
Corral
Pickett.
might get in there. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's those two things kind of made it for tough pickings. I think the Cowboys had some difficult decisions to make at different points, and I think look, despite that, I feel like they had it wasn't as terrible as we all thought it could be. Um, but it also didn't have the kind of floor that we expected, because you looked at guys like Kenyon Green and Zion Johnson going off the board early. They clearly seem to be more interested in the guys who can play guard and tackle, right?
Which
So
I mean, I agree with.
I get it.
This is my problem with Zion and Green before.
Yeah.
I would have liked those guys at 24, and I would have been happy with the selection. But you got to realize you're not getting a ton of value there if those guys are only playing guard. And it was pretty clear for the Cowboys that they had some concerns about Zion, even as a guard in the NFL. Like, it sounds like they liked him better at center. And if that's the case, you really don't. I mean, the value is just not there picking a center at number 24.
Let me ask you this, because and we talked about this in the DMs. There was a moment during the post-draft press conference where Will McClay made a comment that very much seemed to indicate that Trevor Linderbaum was not their number one center.
Yep.
I'm Tyler. Yeah, sorry. Already, these names are already leaving my head. I wonder if Zion Johnson was that guy, and that's who they actually considered to be their number one center. I'm just throwing that out there because that comment was very interesting.
I've not been told this or anything, but this is more just like an educated guess. I think it was Cole Strange.
Interesting.
And it makes a little bit more sense because Strange is 6'5", 310 pounds with, much longer arms. It sounds like the NFL just likes Strange a whole lot more than everybody else did. Like, I don't know if you saw the clip on like Kyle Shanahan talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, we watched it. That's a first round guy all day, right?" So,
I definitely saw Dane's face when they picked him. It was interesting, and I think the Rams brain trust kind of reacting to him being picked kind of showed that they were clearly very interested in him as well.
Yeah, and Lance Sirlein, one of the most respected offensive line people in the league. His dad was working with Cole Strange, and he said through the whole process, "Don't be surprised if this guy goes top 40, top 50," and he did. Right? It happens. That's why this class is strange, right? But
thank you. Well done, sir.
All right, let's talk about the players and what we think. We're not going to spend a lot of time, but just really quickly. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. Heavens knows I ate a lot of Built Bars this weekend. Keep my energy up, because holy cow, that was a lot. But Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. You can eat them, you can enjoy them. They're very healthy for you. They only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Compare that to your average candy bar, which has 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. It's not even a contest. Go to Built.com to get all of your favorites, including banana cream pie, raspberry double chocolate, and so many more. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, let's run through these draft picks really quickly. Again, we're not going to spend a ton of time, but just in case you haven't heard anything about these players, here we go. Tyler Smith, pick 24.
Yeah, so we mentioned him a lot on Friday, but a very athletic, very strong, good temperament, nasty guy who we think that is going to come in and play guard for you right away, and then likely will make a move to tackle eventually once he kind of gets some hand technique stuff under control. Basically, at this point, his hands have a very low starting point. He has some holding issues because of the strike point. Once they can get those fixed, I think he can make a move out to tackle maybe in a year or two.
I still wonder if he's going to be a better right tackle than left tackle. We'll see. It's pretty clear they want him to play left tackle. But
we should talk about that. It's interesting that they kind of are referring to these guys by side, right? Like he's a left guard, left tackle. He's going to play on the left side. I think that's interesting. That's an interesting approach to kind of dealing with this.
Well, I agree with it though. It's a lot
Yeah,
easier to slide a guard that's playing left guard to left tackle than it is to have a guy completely change up his stance and everything,
I
right?
agree.
Um,
Absolutely.
we should also mention we talked about before how the Cowboys love to draft college offensive tackles and slide them to guard. They did it again. I mean, this is like the millionth time that they've done it. So, not surprising at all. All right, next one. Sam Williams. We should also tell people he wants to be referred to as D. Williams. He was on the Blogging the Boys podcast. So we'll do that if that's his wish. So D. Williams, defensive end from Ole Miss.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is explosive and fast, and I think he's a speed to power rusher guy all day long. He's kind of, he's very underdeveloped. He has some. I think he has some usefulness immediately. I think you're going to be able to put him in on third downs, and he can rush the passer, as part of a rotation. But I think that he definitely has a ways to go. What he has physically can't be taught. He's incredibly strong for a guy that's only 6'3", 260. He's incredibly explosive. If I'm not mistaken, he had like a 1.52, a 1.52 10-yard split. That's freaking ridiculous.
Yep.
As Dane Brugler pointed out, that's actually faster than Garrett Wilson's 1 10-yard split. And D. Williams is 260 plus pounds.
Yep.
So this is a guy who I think that has some traits that you can come in right away with the traits that he has, and he can give you some pass rushes early. But I think, year 2, year 3, this guy could really develop into a demon on the edge and be a guy that kind of is your Randy Gregory replacement in 2 years and part of a rotation to replace Randy this year.
I think he's like Dante Fowler 2.0. Go look at Fowler coming out of college. Identical size,
Yep.
Almost identical athleticism. Both struggle a little bit with the hips. They're not the most bendy guys in the world, but I think in the right scheme, on the right defense, you can be a pretty productive pass rusher. I also think, man, I don't know if you saw this interview, but him talking about playing the 4-eye at Ole Miss, and somebody asking him, how excited are you to play like a traditional edge rusher? And his eyes lit up. Like, he is so excited to not have to battle tackles and guards anymore. So I do think the scheme change is going to really benefit him. We'll see how much. Next one, Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver from South Alabama in the 3rd round.
This one is, again, we talked about it. We talked about all these wide receivers except for Jalen Tolbert simply because of the idea that he came from South Alabama. We kind of ruled out that the Cowboys would pick a South Alabama wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round, wherever he was going to be picked. But I mean, this is a guy who, frankly, to me, and everyone said it, so I'm not breaking news here. He's a very Michael Gallup type player. He's going to get downfield. He's very smooth. He moves very well. He can attack the ball at its highest point. He'll go up and get it. He'll win jump balls. He's got good quickness, very good quickness. A good start stop. I think he, has some route refinement that needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. I think he's like a mean streak version of Michael Gallup, right? Because if you watch him, man, he's trash talking. He's making big catches. He's like cradling the ball like a baby in front of guys. I mean, it's just he's a lot of fun. And the competition, times he's played in big time competition against Tennessee, he blew them out and had like a 7-catch, 140 plus yard game. I like this guy a lot. I think he has a lot to his game that's very similar. My only issue with him really is that it seems like again more of the same. It seems like
I think that's purposeful though. Honestly,
yeah,
I think it is.
Probably so.
I think part of it, to me, I don't see the Michael Gallup comp. I could be totally wrong. I see CeeDee Lamb, like just that same 6'1", 190-pound guy that's kind of flexible when he's in the air. 4.5 speed, really, but plays faster than that. I think Tolbert should be a slot receiver in the NFL, and you just let him do.
I think he will.
Yeah, deep middle of the field stuff. Fun fact: he's older than CeeDee Lamb.
That's funny. He does a really good job. You talked about crossing routes. He does a really good job on those long over routes. Like he just presents a very nice target coming across the field. So I have a feeling that he'll get a lot of catches kind of running those sort of routes because he's not a big guy, but he has a big target radius because of his just ability to high point and attack the football in the air.
Next one, Jalen Ferguson, tight end in the 4th round. I believe the Cowboys were going to draft Charlie Kohler until the Ravens picked him one spot ahead of him, but they go with Jake Ferguson, tight end from Wisconsin.
Yeah, Ferguson is one of the guys who, with Otten and the Ohio State
Rucker. Yep.
Rucker. Yeah, I was thinking Rutgers sounded wrong in my head,
Rucker.
and it is Rucker. I think that those three were kind of the guys that you felt like you could plug and play as a versatile tight end in the NFL, right? These are guys who could come in right away, function as a blocker, kind of work their way into their role. And I think that Ferguson is that guy. He's going to come in here. He's going to be a solid blocker. He's a hard worker. He's a coach's son. He's son of Barry Alvarez, who's the very legendary coach from Wisconsin for years and years. So he comes from a football family. He has the pedigree. I think he has the kind of ability as a blocker. He has really good quickness. I think he's actually he's one of those guys who is. Is very rare, has the blocking ability, but also just the short area quickness. He doesn't have long speed at all. He's not, pulling away from guys. But in the same way that Witten was really good at separating at the top of route, despite being old as hell, he could get open like that. And the other thing about it too is that he catches everything. Like, he just has incredible hands. He's very, very reliable in that sense. So to me, he reads like a very solid tight end too. Some people are comparing him to Schultz. I think Schultz is a little more athletic than this guy. But I think that Ferguson can come in and serve in that tight end 2 role very well, and be a better blocker than Blake Jarwin was. Not nearly the wide receiver, but be a better traditional tight end 2 than I think what you're normally used to, which is another receiving tight end as your tight end 2.
I was just lukewarm on the pick. I like some of the tight ends better, but once we got to that stage in the 4th round, they kind of got wiped out at tight end. The draft just did not fall particularly great for them at that spot. I'll save the rest of my thoughts on him for later in the week. Matt Waletzko, offensive tackle from North Dakota.
Why don't you give me your thoughts here? Because Waletzko better than I do, frankly.
Watched every rep of him at the Senior Bowl, and his technique is miles away. He needs to gain about 35 pounds probably. He's got a massive frame, but the technique is so far away from being ready for the NFL. However, this is probably my favorite pick of the draft for the Cowboys, because when you get to the 5th round, you gamble on athletes, and this guy is one of the best athletes we've ever seen at the tackle position. He's extremely long. And despite the technique being pretty poor, he didn't lose at the Senior Bowl. So if you just find a way to refine stuff over the next year or two, you might be looking at somebody who could be a swing tackle in 2023, 2024, and who knows beyond that. These are the kind of guys that are worth gambling on when you get to the 5th round.
He's 6'7", 315 pounds, and you're right. He could easily gain 30, 35 more pounds.
He looks like a stick out there. It's ridiculous. Yeah,
he's got 36-inch arms, like 36-inch plus arms.
Yep.
And he ran a 5.03 with a 1.7 split. I mean, that's really moving for a big guy with a 9 foot 5 inch broad jump. The reason I'm quoting these testing numbers is because, that's the bottom line with this guy. He, like you said, it's basically building him from the ground up as technique wise, which, look, that's what you get from these guys. And those are the guys that are becoming the superstars nowadays. These kind of developmental athletes. If you could find a way to get this guy's technique right, oh boy, he could be something else.
And again, this is North Dakota, not North Dakota State, the powerhouse. So you get him in the NFL with some NFL coaching in an NFL weight room. We'll see 2 years from now if you can find a way to stash him either on the practice squad or whatever. I just think he's got a lot of traits. A 7'1" wingspan. He is absurdly huge. All right, the next pick that the Cowboys had, Deron Bland, a cornerback from I don't even remember, was Fresno State. Yeah. long,
over 6 foot tall corner. You know, basically just the prototype. I mean,
Yep.
they fits all the metrics. He says 32-inch arms, which is pretty decent for, you know, they usually like 33 or 32 and a half at least. But
32 is the threshold. You have to be at
32 is the minimum. So he got that. He's got some good speed. He ran a 4.46. I think the thing that really stands out here with Bland is he's a very, very good man coverage player.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that he really kind of shined in at Fresno State and that he's known for. So that seems to kind of fit in a lot with what the Cowboys want to do.
Next one, Damon Clark, linebacker from LSU. We spent a good portion of a show talking about him. So if you want to go listen to our pre-draft thoughts on him, you can do that. But again, 5th round is the type of spot where you want to gamble on somebody like this, where if he was healthy, probably a late 2nd, early 3rd round pick.
Yeah, I had a 2-3 on him. You know, we talked about him. Please go back and check that out. To get him in the 5th round here is a fantastic gamble.
Did you hear Kuiper's thoughts on him as he was breaking him down?
I didn't actually.
So if you have a chance to go back and watch it, Kuiper said he heard from teams before injury that he was like late 1, early 2, and he was in competition to be the first linebacker drafted.
I mean, I really liked him. Again, like I think
Good
you
player.
and I said this is going to be blasphemy, and I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud because I told you this, but I liked him just as much as I liked Nakobe Dean when I watched him, simply because I felt like there was more upside there and the athleticism. So the Cowboys to get him here, and frankly, it sounds like he may even, you know, according to Stephen Jones, we'll see. He may even sneak into the end of the season and get some reps. So if that's the case, I mean, this is a slam dunk pick in the 176.
We'll see. I'm still going forward with the expectation he's not going to play this year. And I think that's probably the smart thing to do. But
that's what we should expect.
That's what we should expect. But I think the Cowboys plan is in 2023, you'll have Micah Parsons on a rookie contract. You'll have Jabril Cox on a rookie contract. You'll have Damon Clark on a rookie contract. You'll have another linebacker that we're going to talk about here in a second. As long as Clark can get back to close to what he was at LSU, you're going to have a good player that at the very least can be part of a rotation.
Absolutely. And suddenly you've got a linebacker core that you feel as good about as you did, I guess, at this point last year, which was kind of fool's gold.
It's just way cheaper with a lot less draft capital invested into it, right?
That's right.
And I mean, the other thing we should mention, far more athletic, right? I mean, Damon Clark is an athlete. I mean, he can really run. He's got great size. We know that Jabril Cox is a great athlete. We know Parsons is an incredible athlete. We should also mention Devin Harper, linebacker from this is Oklahoma State, I believe. Yep. I mean, you're getting a 4-5 guy that can run, hit, and can play a bunch of special teams.
Yeah, and again, not surprised these 235-ish 4-5 guys. That's what they're looking for at linebacker nowadays. That's the kind of prototype. So they got 2 of them, and both of them are pretty athletic. Yeah,
this is a pure special teams pick for the Cowboys here, right? They want somebody that can play on punt return, kickoff. He was a 2-time special teams captain at Fresno State. When he came in on the 30 visit with the Cowboys, it was Bones Fossil that was showing him around. So this is a special teams pick. We'll see if he ever develops anything on defense. And the last pick that we should mention, we kind of skipped over him. John Ridgeway, defensive tackle, Arkansas.
I mean, this guy is going to become a fan favorite pretty quick, it seems like, just based on his interviews and everything he sounds like. I mean, this guy is a trash can filled with dirt. And is 6'5", 320. He's not going to get moved around a lot by offensive linemen or himself, frankly. He's just not going to – he's going to be in one spot, and he's not going to get moved. But I think this is very much an exciting pick for me, simply because of what it means that the Cowboys are kind of breaking the seal, if you will, on drafting. I mean, again, they drafted a guy in the 7th round last year. That doesn't necessarily, mean that. I mean, I think, like you said, he's Bohanna's going to feel like there's no competition here. But I think the fact that they're willing to start drafting these guys, yeah, I'm sure there is. The fact that they're willing to draft these guys now, these one techniques, run stuffers, means that they're recommitting to these guys. And I know that the analytics don't like it and all that, but I just think that you need these kind of players on your roster to kind of help slow down the run games when they can find a way. The Marcus McCool Mendoza line, or whatever we're calling that, where your run defense is so bad that it's actually becomes the most pertinent thing on your most important thing to fix on your team. The Cowboys didn't ever actually kind of fall beneath that threshold last year, but this kind of investment in the sort of body in the middle of the defense sort of protects you from hopefully what happened with the 49ers in the playoff game, where they were just kind of tearing the middle of your lineup.
This will be a situational player, and I mean that like during the game and even game to game, right? There's probably going to be games where he's just not active because you're going to be going against a team that's not going to try to run the ball between the tackles very often. So you won't need him. But if you get to play a team like Baltimore, or you're playing the 49ers or somebody like that, you're going to be really happy that you have this guy on the field. Doesn't provide you any pass rush, but can really hold up against the run. And I saw enough plays from him making plays outside of the tackle box where he's at least going to he's not so big that he's sloppy and he tires easily. That's not really his game. He's going to play hard for the 20 snaps that he's in there. So I like it. It's good value here. What was it? 5th round? Yeah, late 5th round.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key, right? I mean, that's appropriate place to take that kind of player. And the Cowboys just have avoided doing it in the past, so I'm glad to see that they're kind of filling that need appropriately.
Draft grades are stupid, but let's hand them out. What grade do you give the Cowboys here?
I mean, I hate draft grades.
I went C-.
I'll go B-. I think that, you have to, if you're going to do that kind of thing, you have to take into consider the way that the draft fell. I mean, which is something that you have no control. It didn't fall well for the Cowboys. I think they still were able to salvage a good draft out of a very bad circumstance. So,
this is very much a wait and see draft for the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there isn't a CeeDee Lamb, there isn't a Micah Parsons. And frankly, Micah Parsons wasn't even, as excited. We weren't excited about Micah Parsons the way that we should have been.
Who could ever hate the Micah Parsons pick? That guy's an idiot, man. But I agree. I think this is a draft where we're really going to have to wait till we get to training camp and into the season. And we might not even have a clue until next year anyways, until we see what does Tyler Smith look like from year 1 to year 2? What does Jalen Tolbert look like after a year of NFL coaching? Just take a wait and see approach with this class for the Cowboys. So we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to break down Jalen Tolbert and Sam Williams in depth. So be ready for that. We'll continue with our deep dives into all the Cowboys selections. We'll do a UDFA show at some point. We're going to bring on some guests to go over some of these guys as well. So make sure you guys are on the lookout for that. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. You can follow Landon at McCool BCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher. We'll see you guys next time.